Hello, colleagues. It's great to have you with us today for our annual town hall meeting with our president and provost. Many of you had the opportunity last week to meet our new provost, Elizabeth Chilton, when she had her virtual visit. And over the last couple of days, President Schultz and Provost Chilton have been joining us for a variety of meetings and opportunities to connect, at least virtually, with the campus community. And so it is a great privilege to have our annual culminating event for their visit to campus. Would have preferred that it be in person, but we're really pleased to welcome Kirk and Elizabeth to campus. And with that, Kirk, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Well, hello, Vancouver, and great to see everybody. Really wish that we were able to do this in person and not via Zoom, but just to make sure that we keep things safe, we wanted to make sure that we managed our visit in this particular way. Let me start off, though, by expressing my appreciation to all of our faculty, staff, and students for your flexibility, for your hard work. I know people are have a lot of challenges right now. Maybe you've got you've all of a sudden become a K through 12 teacher that you didn't think you were going to, or you have childcare or elder parent issues that are on top of your regular work-related things. So we want to make sure we can do everything we can to assist you through Mel and the leadership team in Vancouver, myself, Elizabeth, and our colleagues in Pullman, or anywhere across the system. So please be sure to reach out to us if there are things that we can do, or importantly, suggestions that you have on ways that we can make sure that we're minimizing stress in the workplace. I'm really disappointed not to be there because I get my donut fix when I come to Vancouver. And I was really discouraged a couple weeks ago when Max Alt texted me that Blue Star Donuts was going under, because that was always a required stop for me at PDX. Both coming and going, by the way. I wanted to use both opportunities. So anyway, thanks for being here today, and we look forward to interacting with all of you. Just a reminder, the chat function is open, and please make sure that if you've got questions and things like that, please put those questions in chat, and we'll try and either answer them while we're going along, or if it's more appropriate, we'll get them at the end, or depending on whether Elizabeth and I are talking, the other one may try and answer that, as well as we have some colleagues that are working on that as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to have a dialogue today as much as practically possible under this Zoom environment. So Ginger, if I can get that first slide up, please, I think we'll get cranked up. All right. Washington State University acknowledges that its locations statewide are in the homelands of Native peoples who have lived in this region from time immemorial. The university expresses its deepest respect for and gratitude to the original caretakers of the region. As an academic community, we acknowledge our responsibility to establish and maintain relationships with the Native peoples in support of tribal sovereignty and the inclusion of their voices in teaching, research, and programming. We also pledge that these relationships will consist of mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our newest member of our leadership team at WSU, Elizabeth Chilton. Elizabeth, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Next slide, please, Ginger. So I'm really happy to be joining you today, and like Kirk, I really wish that it were in person. Of course, I did my entire set of interview sessions and most of my onboarding virtually without ever having seen any of the campuses in the WSU system. And I'm hoping there's some gluten-free donuts for me out there when I'm eventually able to come out. I began officially my position as WSU's Provost and Executive Vice President on July 15th, and I moved to Pullman from New York State in late June with my son, who is a rising sophomore, college sophomore that is, and my husband, who like myself is a professor of anthropology. And we also came with our two very loud and rambunctious dogs, and I hope that they keep to themselves during our session today. My research specialization is the archaeology of Northeastern North America, and particularly Native American history, ecology, and diet prior to European colonization. After spending 5 years at Harvard University post-PhD, I then spent 15 years at UMass Amherst as a faculty member, department chair, center director, and lastly, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Research and Engagement. And I then served as Dean of Arts and Sciences at Binghamton University in New York for 3 years before joining the Cougar community this summer. Certainly the day-to-day COVID response work has taken up much of my time over the past several first weeks, but some of the long-term issues I'm excited to be working on with all of you over the next 6 months and beyond. And we'll talk about some of these later in the presentation. But first of all, creating meaningful and productive system-wide partnerships. It really was the systemness question and questions that were asked of me during the interview process that really got me excited about coming to WSU and working with all of you. As it's a relatively young system compared to the 2 other public university systems I've been affiliated with. And so I'm really eager to work with you all on the next phase of WSU's history in that department. Secondly, I bring a really strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, we'll say a little bit more about some of the activities that have been going on for a long time here, but that I'm hoping to build on. But finally, promoting a whole life philosophy for faculty, staff, and students. This is something that Professor Schultz has highlighted in his communications to the campus community, the university community. Part of supporting equity and inclusion is being flexible and being kind to ourselves and to one another, especially during these really super challenging times. No one told me about the wildfires and smoke season during my interview process, but I got through that too, and I know we will get through all the many challenges we're facing. So thank you again for attending today. I look forward to our discussion.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. And, one of the things that you can make sure and ask her is what her favorite after hours drink is. And she can fill you in on a great story about how that came about. So a little tantalizing tale for the end of our presentation. Typically in the recent university highlights section, in previous years, this has been very quantitative, very graph heavy. And we just felt this year doing these via Zoom that we would pull some of that data information out. We talk more broadly about a few things. When the Marcom folks weren't looking, I did jam one graph in there, but we purposely did that. And then when Elizabeth next takes over, she's going to talk about some very specific achievements for WSU Vancouver, and then we'll go back to some of the university and system initiatives coming up over this next year. So that's a little bit of the structure, so you won't see maybe as much quantitative information as you have in past years. So Ginger, next slide, please. So some recent institutional achievements, and the first completion of the first ever system 5-year strategic plan. WSU Vancouver, under Mel's leadership, you all have had dynamic strategic plans that are tied into budget, that represent the campus community and voices coming together to talk about the future. They're flexible, but they also point in a direction of where you want to go as a campus and a campus community. In the past, we never had a system strategic plan. Generally, what was good for Pullman was seen as good for the system, and vice versa. Now, that attitude was not necessarily shared outside of Pullman, but it was really an important step when we talk about systemness to have a plan that was really not the Pullman campus specifically. And so Chris Hoyt, Chief of Staff in the Office of the President, this is really in her area of responsibility. And now the hard part starts. It's one thing to put the plan together, but the really important thing is that we execute off that plan really well. We'll talk about that later. And thanks to all of you that were engaged in those type of activities. We also launched a new Center for Research in Emerging Infectious Diseases in Nairobi, Kenya. And this is all part of WSU's Global Health Kenya program. We have over 100 full-time people on the ground in Kenya that are WSU employees. And this continues to help us have that global international presence that I think is so important. This center was made possible by a $7.6 million funding over 5 years from the National Institute of Health. And it's been led by Kariuki Jenga, who is our newest member of the National Academy of Medicine and was inducted several years ago. I originally was going to visit this center this last year in May, and we just had this little national, global pandemic that meant that international travel wasn't there, but looking forward eventually to going and seeing and meeting our colleagues in Africa. One of the other things that has been really important, and we talk about systemness, is are we able to launch unique degree programs at other locations in Pullman that are really in demand by the community? And I think a great example of that is the new Department of Viticulture and Enology offering a degree in viticulture and enology. We built the Wine Science Center in Richland, Washington on the campus of WSU Tri-Cities. And industry said, hey, we want a specific degree program to go along with the facility that's here. And so really pleased that this program will be jointly done by Connors as well as WSU Tri-Cities. And all of the Viennese students will be in the Tri-Cities. This is not going to be done kind of 4 years in Pullman and you kind of go through there for a 2-week experience. And why I think this is important is you can be in the classroom in the morning and you can be out in our wine growing region of the state in the afternoon, working on a vineyard, dealing with marketing, dealing with bottling, dealing with fermentation, all those different kind of things. Talk about the land grant mission. I think there's a great example moving forward of how we have to look at things at a system level. Finally, the Transformative Change Institute, which is out of Elizabeth's office, is really focused around what we can do creatively to increase our retention rate on all of our campuses. There are faculty who've been through this change initiative on all 5 of our physical campuses, including Vancouver, and we appreciate the great work that you all are doing. And I might add here that Vancouver has led the way in a lot of the work done at WSU and WSU system in making sure that when we look at statistics around retention, that it's not just are we retaining our white students, but are we retaining students of color or retaining first generation students? All should be retained at the same level. And Vancouver has done some fantastic job at particularly students of color being basically the same level as everybody else. And I don't know anywhere else in the system that has done that. So congratulations, and you all continue to lead the way on some of these great initiatives. Next slide, please. Some noteworthy faculty honors, and to take the accomplishments of our faculty across campuses and R&E centers and condense it to one slide doesn't do service to the great job that you all are doing. But there are a couple things that we just want to highlight in this section, and Elizabeth will hit on some very specific things to Vancouver in our next section. We had 8 faculty elected to the Washington State Academy of Sciences this last year. This included Tim Basler in the Global Animal Health, Kelly Brayton in Veterinary Medicine, Laura Griner Hill, our new Senior Vice Provost, who's also a professor in Human Development, Alaire McLean, who's in the Sociology in the College of Arts and Sciences, Michael McDonald and Sterling McPherson, who are both in the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine, Katrina Mealy, who is in the College of Veterinary Medicine, and Xin Zhang, who's director of the Center for Precision Automated Agricultural Systems in Connors. Now, I mentioned these. It's great to celebrate our colleagues. Just a reminder, there are faculty here that should be in the Washington Academy of Sciences, and we want to help you facilitate nominating our colleagues. And it's really important to do that as often as we possibly can. We also had 3 College of Nursing faculty that were named Fellows of the American Academy of Nursing. And that's Renee Hoaxel, Shelley Fritz, and Kakab Shoshani. They'll be inducted in late October. And there was only 230 people around the nation, around the world that were elected this next time. And then Stephen Hines from the College of Vet Med was awarded really a classroom innovation award nationally for some of the cool work he was doing during COVID-19. Guess what? All of you out there, and many of you are doing super creative work around what you do and the way you interact with students and what you're doing with your classes. And I hope to see many other WSU faculty also receive this kind of recognition from different professional groups about the creative work that you're doing engaging our students in this environment. So thank you for that. But hats off to our colleagues for this national and regional recognition. Next slide. Well, here's the slide, and I want to make sure that I got my one graph in here. Congratulations to all of you as faculty. I know that many of you here are fully engaged in submitting grant applications, and I appreciate the work that Christine Portforce continues to do, helping us grow our research program here as our Vice Chancellor for Research. If we look at this number, it's almost $370 million. And hats off to you all as faculty. You're competing, you're submitting proposals that are bigger, larger, and you're winning. And this is really a faculty hustle award. If we take this number and we break it down by tenure track faculty, the productivity of WSU faculty is on par or higher than Texas A&M and Purdue, which says that we have outstanding people doing outstanding work. So give yourselves a round of applause. Congratulations on this. This is really exceptional and outstanding work. Next slide, please. So this last year for Cougar Athletics was also a fantastic year. And what's shown here is our women's soccer team. And any of you who are soccer fans, we advanced to the College Cup for the first time in university history, which means basically the Final Four. The young women that you see here, I got to know several of them just over the course of their careers at WSU. Great in the classroom, great on the field, fantastic competitors. They had to win 3 away matches at other places that had not lost on those fields all year. So it was really an exciting run for them. Academic success. For the first time in school history, all of our intercollegiate athletic teams averaged over a 3.0 GPA in the spring semester. Pat Shun, when he was hired as our athletic director, talked specifically about you take care of stuff in the classroom, you're going to take care of stuff on the field. Now, everybody's going to say that, but Pat, we've really seen that take off under his leadership. And he's hired coaches that also have emphasized that these are student athletes and we got to make sure we take care of the student part, not just the athlete part. And finally, hats off to, again, Pat and his team, raised over $27 million in gifts, pledges, and cash for intercollegiate athletics, which is more than 10 million higher than we've ever done before. And that's the level of fundraising for our sports program that we should come to see, and part of what's going to make it a self-sustaining entity moving down the road. Next slide, please. Well, we also had a great year in philanthropy, and I appreciate the great job that so many of our folks like Jennifer and her team do, going out, meeting people, making sure that when I come to town that we've got people for me to meet with to help advance gifts, for Mel and the work that he does, meeting with corporations, foundations, individual donors, and continuing to move that forward. Philanthropy is going to continue to be important for us, and really pleased this last year to have $125 million in philanthropic activity. We were just down a couple percentage points from where we thought we would be, and a lot of places were down 20 or 30%. So Cougs are still stepping up. We received the sort of big time gift we got this year was from Bruce Amundsen and Julie Parker. They endowed our second deanship at WSU. We have one in Connors. Now we have one in the Murrow College, and also did an endowment to support the athletic directorship in intercollegiate athletics. We saw a new $3 million endowment to boost food security. And we also saw that $200,000 system-wide was collected for COVID-19 relief. And we want to continue to thank our generous donors, faculty and staff, and other people that contributed to this to help with food insecurity during this really, really challenging time. I'm proud of the job that we continue to do here in Vancouver with fundraising and philanthropy, and look forward to continuing to move that forward in the future when I can do live in-person visits with individuals here, hopefully sooner rather than later. Next slide, please. All right, and tired of hearing me speak, so it's time for Elizabeth to wake up from her nap and do this part now.
Well, thank you, Kirk, I think. Next slide, please, Ginger. Having spent time with the Vancouver leadership team yesterday, and also last week, I got to spend a half day with many of you. I was really impressed to learn about some of the areas that WSU Vancouver is excelling throughout the pandemic. And of course, I'm really just at the very beginning of learning about the Vancouver campus, and I look forward to learning more in the months to come. But I did want to highlight a few things here today. First of all, of course, I learned that distance delivery is not new to WSU Vancouver. Vancouver's been using this method since its inception in 1989. Today, the technology, I would dare say, is probably a bit better, and faculty have been trained to develop courses specifically for hybrid and high flex delivery. Vancouver's Director of Blended and Networked Learning, Mike Caulfield, strives to make educational technology work. Over the summer, I understand that more than 50 faculty participated in a 14-week training, and 100 more took a short course. When Washington's stay-at-home orders closed all research in March, except for essential activities, 19 WSU Vancouver researchers showed their resilience, pivoting and starting new research or expanding existing research projects related to COVID-19. A student survey conducted over the summer revealed that 13% of WSU Vancouver students have unreliable or no access to Wi-Fi. So WSU Vancouver extended outdoor Wi-Fi and has helped students to access hotspots. In addition, WSU Vancouver's loaner laptop program was expanded to serve more students. And then finally, excuse me, the Community Foundation for Southwest Washington provided $85,000 from its Southwest Washington COVID Response Fund to help students with financial emergencies. The 2020 WSU Vancouver Faculty and Staff Giving Campaign raised another $30,000 for the same fund, and the money helps students with rent, utilities, childcare, medical expenses, technology, and more. And it also provided much needed relief for students not eligible for CARES Act funding. Next slide, please. As I will discuss more in a few minutes, WSU Vancouver enrolled its largest freshman class and only slightly down in transfer students, FTE, and headcount. About 6 weeks before the fall term, it looked like WSU Vancouver could be as much as 8.6% down in fall enrollment, and we were all concerned about that. But our kudos and appreciation to the admissions team and all of the individuals who help get students enrolled. Enrollment is definitely a team sport. Secondly, retention, equally important. Over the summer, a team of people worked together to reimagine the first year student success seminar. Freshmen are enrolled in a 2-credit introductory course, their first year, which is taught by their academic advisor. And students are not only introduced to a wide array of resources, but they also learn goal setting, time management, and growth mindset thinking. Sounds like I might need a refresher on some of those topics. A major theme of this course is also cultural wealth literacy, which guides students through discussions about identity, race, and culture. Next slide, please. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, I have a strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'm appreciative of Chancellor Netzhammer's leadership in this area and was pleased to learn about the wealth of initiatives at WSU Vancouver. First of all, since its inception in 2018, more than 50% of WSU Vancouver's faculty and staff have participated in building a community of equity, or the BASE Professional Development Program. BASE provides for anti-racist, equity-minded, and culturally responsive enrichment. Established in fall 2019, the Center for Intercultural Learning and Affirmation strives to cultivate an inclusive community where historically underserved students are affirmed and have a sense of belonging at WSU Vancouver. The Center SELA values intercultural learning, co-curricular programming, and service that illuminates the cultural wealth and intersecting identities held by students of the SELA. Also founded in 2019, Thrive is a support and retention program for first-year students from historically underrepresented communities, including students of color. By the end of spring 2020, the inaugural Thrive cohort achieved an 85% retention rate. The Office of Equity and Diversity curated an extensive list of anti-racist resources over the summer. This list is available to all and includes articles, books, movies, TV shows, and much more. The virtual gallery of affirmations amplifies voices of the campus community and magnifies WSU Vancouver's intentional commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. The gallery can be found by visiting the WSU Vancouver homepage. All of these things are so much more needed now during the pandemic, during the wildfires. All of these extra stresses on the system really have served to just exacerbate the structural inequalities that all of these programs were there and set up to address. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Kirk.
And you didn't even make a smart alecky comment about me taking a nap. Thank you. Well, fiscal updates, just a couple things before we go to the one slide I'll show in this section. One, we are going to continue to pass along information to WSU's system as we have it. And I state that because sometimes people think that we've got this information and we just, because it's bad news, we don't want to share it or things like that. The fact of the matter is we don't want to pass along anything until we believe it's concrete, that we actually know where things are. So as an example, people have asked, well, what's going to happen with the state budget? We don't know. The Washington legislature and the governor and others have elected not to hold a special session to deal with some of the budgetary challenges in Washington. So all we know is the same thing we knew this summer. So please, if you sort of feel you've heard a rumor or you think you know something or somebody's told you something, reach out to myself, reach out to Mel, reach out to Rennie, whomever, and we will try and get you the most factual information about anything. I've been through, unfortunately, several challenging fiscal years as a president at two institutions, and the rumors were generally worse than the real news was. And so please ask if things come up or you just don't feel you're getting the information that you need or you would like to see, and we'll provide that for you. So next slide. I've shown this slide every year since I've been here. And just as a reminder, this is a system level slide. This is not particularly for the Pullman campus or clearly not for the Vancouver campus. I will point out just that I hope you all appreciate that Mel and his team have done a fantastic job of managing the financial picture of WSU Vancouver. There are no red bars there. And I think I just want to acknowledge that because I think that financial stewardship, making investments where needed, but being really careful has been an important hallmark of which you should expect WSU to operate as a whole, whether that's at the college level, the campus level, or the system level. So what's shown here in FY 2013 was the last year that WSU as a whole brought in more money than it spent. Then in 2014, we started really a 4-year time frame of spending between $25 and $30 million more each year than we had. And this was due to lots of reasons, starting a medical school, a lot of units overspent, intercollegiate athletics, you lump them all together, that's where we were. In FY 2017, I remember announcing that we were going to go on a 3-year reduction plan to move us from $30 million over to FY 2018 to 20, to FY 2019 to 10, with the idea that by FY 2020, we would be back as a total balanced budget for the institution. Those of you who were here in FY 2018, our target was 20 million, and actually we came in at about 7 to 8 million. People rolled up their sleeves, did a great job. By FY 2019, last year, or a year and a half ago, we finished with a small surplus. And then FY 2020, we actually finished with about a $28 million surplus. Now, if you say, hey, Kirk, I'm going to show up in your office in Pullman, I want to see that 28 million. I'm sure you got it under your desk, and we got important things to fund. It's distributed. Some is at WSU Vancouver. Some is in a lot of our colleges and other academic units. A little bit of it is centrally, but it's not all in one place, and it's not kind of sitting in the bank just for us to use for anything that we want to. But I would remind everybody, can you imagine dealing with some of the fiscal challenges we're going to have with COVID-19 and a recession back in FY 2017 when we were already, as an institution, way overspending? Part of the reason that we were able to not do a system-wide set of furloughs or things like this was specifically because of the great job that everybody has done over the last couple of years, putting us back on the fiscal footing where we should be. So kudos to everybody. Thank you. I know it's been hard and will continue to be hard moving forward, but you should expect leadership to continue to be transparent, to continue to provide you data information and timely updates, and to make sure that we're making the right decisions to make sure that WSU is seen as fiscally stable and well managed from a fiscal point of view across all of our campuses. So with that, next slide. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shift, talk about a few upcoming things for this next year that I think are important, and then we'll have a little bit of time for some additional Q&A. So next slide, please. I mentioned the system strategic plan, and I really appreciate everybody working on that. We have a small internal kind of action-oriented team led by Chris Hoyt that is working on what types of things we're going to be doing. Campus strategic plans will support the system plan. That'll be working back and forth and be aligned. And I know you, Mel, and the leadership team here are already thinking about that next strategic plan for Vancouver. It's really important for the rest of the system to do the same things that have been a hallmark of the strategic planning here, and that's tie system resource allocations, system goals. The old adage is you want to know the priorities of an organization, you follow the money. In the past, we hadn't always necessarily used our strategic plan to make fiscal decisions in Pullman or at the system level. That's the kind of behavioral change that you should see. And it's not, well, Kirk just woke up this morning and decided this is a new strategic initiative. It needs to be the type of thing that we plan out for. We're deliberative. We want to be flexible and respond to new opportunities, but it ought to be a logical progression that people can see and understand and have some sense of where we're spending those resources. Part of one of the things that comes up when we talk about systemness all the time is we have a patchwork budget that's special deals made over the last 30 years that are kind of all taped together. That really needs a redo. And Stacy and Elizabeth are going to be co-leading a team to look at what should the WSU system strategic budgeting look like. And that's not the kind of thing they get together and knock out in 2 weeks. It's the type of thing that is a multi-year process, because once you come up with what you want to do, there has to be implementation, communication, things like that. So please watch for some of that moving forward. Excuse me, next slide. Elizabeth.
So that slide does not look very good to me. Can you all see it? Okay, there it goes. It's taking its sweet time. Magic. I don't recall it doing that before, but okay. I did want to provide an update on our system-wide enrollment, since many have been asking about this, and Kirk and I both mentioned the successes at Vancouver. But the official data was just tabulated, and we have a system-wide enrollment of 31,000, which is down less than 2% from the all-time record of 31,607 last fall semester. Our ethnic diversity across the system, and as well as our first generation students, remain steady, presenting nearly 1/3 of the student body. Enrollment at WSU Pullman is down, as you may have heard. It's down nearly 1,100 students to 19,000. That is due in large part to deferrals from freshmen and transfers to either the fall or the spring semester or next fall. WSU Health Sciences has seen the largest enrollment in its history at 1,727 students. And not surprisingly, Global Campus saw the largest increase, enrolling a record of just over 4,000 students, up 756 from last year. We're in the process, many of you might know this, some of you listening today may be on the search committee, but we're in the process of hiring a system-wide vice provost for enrollment management. We're scheduling the finalists now, really stellar group, and we hope that search will conclude in October. This will really help manage our system-wide and our campus level and coordinate with each of the campuses in their enrollment management. So with that, I'll turn it back to Kirk. Wake up from your nap now.
Thank you. This campus has led the way in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the important things is that this become really a central part of what we do at WSU across all of our campuses. In Pullman in 2017, we had some protests. We had some students, faculty, and staff who did not feel that the central administration was putting resources, time, effort, and energy into some of the issues around equity and inclusion at WSU. What came out of that was 5 working groups, and I appreciate the leadership of Mary Jo Gonzalez, our Vice President for Student Life, Jamie Nolan, Associate VP, for the work they did in that area. And so the question is now, it is water, I can assure you. The question is now, how do we take that work and continue to move it forward? And the next step is to put together a system-wide President's Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we hope to stand that up sometime in the next, I'll say, month, as we carefully consider membership, what we want that group to do, and so forth. Elizabeth and I are engaging in monthly meetings with our Black Faculty and Staff Association. Our numbers across the WSU system for Black faculty and staff are very small. In Pullman, they're almost infinitesimally small. And what we want to do is work together to say, what can we do to add, create, and find creative ways to add and retain Black faculty and staff. Now, we need to work on our Native American faculty and staff, or Latinx faculty and staff as well. But at the current point in time, we really feel we got to spend some time and focus on that. Elizabeth will talk a little bit about what she'll do. And finally, I really want to express my appreciation to Mel for stepping up this summer and asking and volunteering to lead a group of colleagues across the system, looking at all our policies and procedures through an equity lens. There's things that Elizabeth will mention that we've done that way for 20 or 30 years. That just don't fit our time. And it's not sexy work, but it's really important foundational work for us moving ahead. And Mel is co-leading that with Zoe High Eagle Strong, director of our Native programs on the Pullman campus. And I look forward to all of us implementing new ways to do things as a system that are more inclusive to our diverse faculty, staff, and students. And with that, Elizabeth has several items that she's leading as our provost that I think are going to help us move forward.
Thank you. So first of all, this is still being finalized, but I did want to let you know that this fall, WSU will launch a new cluster hire, faculty cluster hire in racism and social inequality in the Americas. And the goal of this cluster hire is to seek scholars who will contribute to work in this area and help lead institutional transformation at WSU. In recent years, academic institutions have utilized these kinds of cluster hires to attract and retain a more diverse faculty, and I have done so at 2 previous institutions. Cluster hires allow the building of cohorts of scholars who can support and mentor each other, as well as mentor all of us. Aside from recruiting and retaining a more diverse faculty, when paired with an explicit network-based mentoring program, such cluster hires can transform the institution through the building of new curricula, research foci, and community engagement. Also, I'm in the process right now of hiring an associate vice provost for inclusive excellence. I should say this is a position that existed in the provost area and has been vacant since May. It's obviously a very critical position to provide system level leadership in inclusive excellence from academic affairs. The call has gone out. If you haven't seen it, it came out under WSU Insider, and the deadline for applications is Friday. So there's still time if you have people you'd like to nominate or if you're interested yourself. The person who holds this role will identify and implement best practices for faculty hiring, tenure and promotion, research support, faculty retention, teaching and mentoring, and curricular planning. And this person will lead the cluster hire program that I just mentioned as well. The AVP will coordinate with existing diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the Division of Student Affairs, the Office of Compliance and Civil Rights, institutional research, and of course, all of the 6 campuses in the WSU system and across other units. And then finally, Kirk mentioned that Chancellor Netzhammer and Zoe High Eagle Strong are heading up a group that's looking at policies and procedures and how our policies and procedures sometimes get in the way of us achieving our equity goals. And one example of that was the sabbatical leave program. Professional leaves are very important, of course, for our tenure stream faculty in advancing their scholarship. And in the past, I understand it was an unspoken rule, and actually I found out that it was an uncodified rule that one was expected to be physically distant from one's home institution during such a leave. And it's clear that making that such a condition disadvantages those who have caregiving obligations or economic constraints, or even just the nature of their research. When I had my sabbatical, I was working on a book, and my institution had the best library for New England archaeology in the world. And so it would have put me at a huge disadvantage if I had had to take that sabbatical somewhere else. So in the call for applications, I think we just sent that out maybe yesterday or the day before, the call for applications for sabbatical leaves. We have made it clear that the physical location of a sabbatical will not be a criteria for evaluation of the potential effectiveness of such a leave. So I'll turn it back over to Kirk.
Just as we finish this up, Workday is coming. And this has been a 4.5-year project for WSU, started in 2016. And originally we were going to have everything stood up July 1 of 2020. And just with COVID-19 and some preparation things, we weren't really ready, and we elected to delay it to January 1st of 21. I remember when we had that discussion, it seemed like it was a long ways off. It's coming up fast. First, please, there are lots of training opportunities coming your direction. 31 training courses, 100 step-by-step reference guides, 30 video or self-paced learning experiences. I'm going to urge all of you, I'm going to do a bunch of them. Don't wait till December 31st to do all the training. Don't behave like I did as an undergraduate, which was a just-in-time type of thing. I urge you to go on there, learn about it. It's going to really help us do things a lot better, I think, in terms of data collection and using data to help us make decisions down the road. I appreciate the many faculty and staff on the Vancouver campus that have been integrally involved in this initiative over the last several years. And then I just always want to remind everybody, I don't care how much planning you do, how much work you do, there's always going to be some bumps in the road. And just hang with us. We're going to get through whatever those bumps are. And I appreciate all the efforts around having finally a more modern system for human resources, our finances, and a lot of our administrative work. So with that, last slide. And thank you. We appreciate the time and lots of great stuff happening on the Vancouver campus. Mel and Rennie and the entire leadership team here do a great job representing your interests to Elizabeth and myself and all. And one of the things we did not mention is, unlike probably the provost for the last 10 years, Elizabeth has been meeting with the chancellors on a regular basis, not because there's a crisis or something to solve. Rennie has been leading the vice chancellors for academic affairs across the system, getting together on a monthly basis. So while you may not have seen a lot of other things yet, I truly believe that over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to make some significant strides in really behaving more like a system, optimizing your opportunities at those campuses, and moving forward in a really positive way. And that's always been a challenge, I think, when I've been on the Vancouver campus, is a lot of the system stuff and what looks good in Eastern Washington doesn't always work in Vancouver or Everett or anywhere else. And I really do think we're on the cusp of seeing changes in the way we just simply operate together and work together more effectively. So with that, happy to do some questions. And we did have one question I know somebody was asking and was answered a little bit just about spring semester. And I don't know, Elizabeth, do you want to talk a little bit about this in general? I mean, a lot of faculty want to know about it and how the decision will be made and what it could look like and some things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So first of all, I do want to say that I don't think we mentioned it here today, but we've said elsewhere that the system roles and responsibilities report made really clear, certainly to me, and Kirk may have thought about this quite a bit before, but it certainly became really apparent that he and I really wear two hats. One as system president, assistant provost, but also as chancellor and vice chancellor for academic affairs for the Pullman campus. That's an unspoken title, but it sort of goes without saying. And both of us have tried to be very explicit, especially in some of these critical decisions about reopening and how much and who's involved and such. That really, those conversations that I've been having about the Pullman campus, I'm wearing my VCAA hat when I'm doing that, and I'm coordinating and communicating with the chancellors so that this decision about the fall, for example, I obviously wasn't here in the spring when decisions were made, but each of the campuses has different constraints. They're in different phases of reopening. They have different levels of different numbers of students, different kinds of classes, and of course, different residential life experience, life context. So I can say that, we've really come to see that, first of all, I don't think anyone is suggesting that any of our campus reopen fully exactly like it was a year ago. I don't think any of us feel that we'll be ready for that. So that, and we're not completely remote. Certainly the exception process for Pullman, for Vancouver, for Everett, Tri-Cities, and Spokane, there are in-person educational activities that are taking place and for-credit classes. So it's really a scale less than it is an on-off button. And for the Pullman campus, we're looking at ways to potentially expand through our exception process, expand the number of face-to-face activities. We need to really get that schedule out and posted to students by mid-October. That's going to be 2 weeks later than we normally would. And so we're working through that process now in Pullman. I've been in conversation for the Pullman campus. Again, I've been in conversation with the Faculty Senate. I've been working with the deans, obviously been working with the registrar's office. We're connected to facilities because this isn't just about the educational delivery, but it impacts facilities, it impacts student affairs and on-campus housing. So it's a complex set of decisions that we're hoping to get that out very soon. I will just, end my long-winded answer by saying that, places like UW never said, we're going remote, we're going online. But in fact, they're 90% of their classes are remote. We said we're going remote, and we had, through our exception process, I don't know if we have quite 10%, but maybe close in terms of just numbers of course sections. So I think it's important that we're savvy about that. I've heard people saying, "Oh, you're 100% online." Well, that's not true. WSU is not 100% online. There's student activities. There's students living on campus in Pullman, and there's certainly a number of face-to-face courses happening, socially distanced, with masks, and with good cleaning protocols associated. So I would call what we're planning for spring a hybrid, and I think each campus is going to have to measure how many classes and what kinds of classes they can offer safely in person.
Elizabeth, thank you. And we want to encourage conversations with our faculty and staff about, concerns that people have surrounding a safe work environment for COVID-19. As I looked around the country, there are some places where it's gotten pretty contentious between the administration and faculty and staff around this. And I think we've largely avoided those types of things across the WSU system. And I want to make sure that we continue to confer, that we continue to communicate well, and that we continue to make decisions so that you all as faculty and staff feel that you're in a safe place and that we're not forcing somebody into an uncomfortable position because I decided, or Elizabeth decided, or Mel decided, we're going to do this. And I think that that's just not good for any particular higher ed campus around the country right now. Other questions? I tried to keep up a little bit with the Q&A and the chat. One final thing, perhaps before we sign off, one of the questions that we've gotten multiple times is focused around, what we might do with furloughs in the future. And I appreciate the fact that Stacy Pearson and her team, working with the chancellors and others, we were able to identify the financial means to not have to do any kind of furloughing system-wide this year. Certain units, like athletics, had to do some furloughing because to meet budget targets, but largely we did not do that. One, I would prefer to not to ever have to do it. I'm not interested in cutting anybody's salary or work hours or things like that if we don't have to. The second thing was, as we started putting together a possible furlough effort, it was clear that staff and our professional track faculty were going to be disproportionately affected by that, and not tenure track faculty. And there were serious equity issues around doing something like that. So we don't anticipate, fortunately, having to do anything like that for the remainder of this academic year. And several people have asked, well, what about 21? Until the legislature meets, until we get some sense of what future cuts could be, we just don't know what we're going to need to do. And anybody who says they can tell you exactly what that's going to look like, their crystal ball is really good. I would just, we're going to continue to look for ways to use our resources to not have to do that. And if you hear something is imminent, please ask me, ask Mel, Rennie, Elizabeth, any of your leaders, and we will make sure that we get you the best information there. So thank you for all you do. Yes, go ahead.
Someone posted a question and I gave a partial answer, but it's something that you may want to chime in on. Sort of the question about research, and some sponsors are giving no cost extensions, but it's not really helping tide people over. And there's a recognition that it's not going to come from the state budget, but are there other creative fundraising activities? Lobbying via the APLU was mentioned. I know our lobbying efforts are constrained, but what might we do as a university to keep our research engine going, given all of the constraints that we have right now in funding?
Yeah, I think that's the first time we've seen that question, and I mean that in a really good way. So I haven't been able to think much about it. I would say I would ask maybe for that individual to sit down with Christine personally, talk about some of what those needs are, and then let us know, and we'll see what types of things that we can do. Mm-hmm. We put together a fund out of Elizabeth's office to sort of assist with faculty needs. It was very broad that way, and we expended $100,000 pretty quickly. We may need to do a similar type of thing for folks in the research area or things like that to help tide over things. So work through Christine. She can work with us or Chris Keene, and we'll see what we can do. My suspicion is there's not going to be a thing we can do. It'll be more individually specific to particular labs and programs, but let us know. well, I can't guarantee a result, but we'll certainly try really hard to see what we can do to help. So great question. With that, thank you all. Thanks for what you do. And I appreciate the hard work that all of you continue to put in to have a great Vancouver student experience. It's different than we had hoped for, but I'm proud of the faculty and staff and people rolling up their sleeves and doing it all. The last thing I'll say is I want to remind everybody, faculty and staff at WSU, in my opinion, are overachievers, and people used to, going that extra mile, that extra distance. I want to just encourage all of you to reset a little bit of your expectations for yourselves. I have to do that. I'm not able to work as many hours as I normally do because of just being exhausted from doing all this stuff. And I've got to reset some of those things. So dealing with COVID, all of the social pressures and those kind of things, reset your expectations. Let us know what we can do to support that, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I want to make sure that we come out of this with you all still feeling valued members of the WSU community. So thank you for all you do. Mel, thank you.
Kirk, Elizabeth, thank you very much. Colleagues, thank you so much for joining us for the last hour. Kirk and I and Elizabeth had an opportunity to meet with our students earlier today, and they weighed in on what they would like to see over the spring. And we'll talk more about that over the upcoming weeks as well. So thank you all for attending. Once again, Kirk, Elizabeth, thank you so much for spending the last couple of days with us.